and welcome to Tech Tips with Sold Out Media. I'm Amanda, and today I'm reviewing the Sony Alpha 7R5. This is an amazing camera, actually. It's blown my mind. It is a 61 megapixel back illuminated Exmor R CMOS sensor that's in this camera, and it is brilliantly sharp. We had the pleasure of using this camera just now on a cooking photo shoot where we used it both to take photos for a cookbook and also to do a lot of the video stuff. We paired it with my regular Canon lineup. I often shoot with all Canons when I do the cooking programs and other music programs that I use or do privately. When we use the TV channel stuff, when we do big events, we have a TV bus and live broadcast gear. But a lot of the more artistic stuff, I tend to like these kind of cameras because of the lenses and the ability to switch them without having to spend a lot of money on airy cameras when I already have to buy the broadcast stuff. But for what it's worth, this thing was so impressive. I put it up against the Canon C70, I put it up against the Canon R5 and the A7 IV, the Alpha 7 IV with the Sony lineup, and it really performed incredibly. I'm going to put up some of the pictures here so you can see just from the cooking program. These are going into a cookbook that's coming out with our friend Ida soon, but wow, what quality in the pictures. And then again, handheld and slow-mo shots, so incredibly stable. But before I get into too many of the details, I just wanted to say the feel of this camera compared to some of the other Sonys is really the best of all worlds. You get this fully articulating screen, but then for those of you who are still into the flip-out screen, you get that too. The feel of this guy, the weight of him, where everything is, it's so well thought out. I really enjoyed working with it, just to get that out of the way. But let's get into actually some of the tests that we did. I have for you right now, talk about some of the photos for starters. I'm looking here. We went out, nice, beautiful, icy weather here in Sweden. I took them out and handheld some pictures and tried to get some macro pictures of these ice crystals and just look side by side. They are really, really close, but I almost have to give the edge to the 61 megapixel Sony. The Canon R5 is carrying a 45 megapixel sensor in it, and it's always been one of my favorites. I've been so impressed with what you can do. And again, handheld with these guys, this sharp, going in, trying to get these ice crystals. Overall, I'll show you some other photos that I took from that day. Like, the pictures were just brilliant. The colors were brilliant. And you've already seen some of the ones from the cooking program now. Really incredible quality. As a photography camera, this is going to make you happy. It's a good pro-level camera. It's not as much money as like an A9 or something, but you're still going to be fairly happy with it. I will say there are a couple of things like readout speed. You might do better if you're doing sports with one of the higher end Sonys, but this guy here, phenomenal for everything else. Now, I want to show you something else that I did while I was out here in the cold. I tried this pixel shift that is in the Sony. You can do a pixel shift with 4 pictures, or you can do a pixel shift with 16 pictures. And what it's actually doing is it's using the IBIS to slightly move the sensor a little bit for each of the pictures, and instead of kind of having a stacked RGB with the sensor and the computer inside the camera filling in the details on the colors and the sharpness, it's actually using these 16 stacked photos to take the picture. And let's just take a look here at how brilliant this picture is. Like, you can see right from the beginning, the vibrance in the picture is incredible. I'll put up one of the pictures from the 16 pictures that came out of it, one of the unstacked photos, and then look at the final product. Now, to do this pixel shift in post-production, you need to use the Sony software Imaging Edge desktop, and you need to use Viewer to be able to see it. And it essentially, what it does is it analyzes all of the 16 raw photos that it takes and then puts them together, and with the 16 image pixel shift, what you end up getting is 240 megapixel in this image. For me, this is fantastic because we do a lot of really big prints, backgrounds for broadcast events and everything like that. So this is going to be incredible for sending to print. But you have to use a tripod, and I would really, really recommend that you use the timer or a remote to actually take the picture, because any shake whatsoever from your hand touching it could mess this up. And you definitely don't want to stand there and try to handhold 16 photos in this pixel shift thing. It's not going to come out sharp at all. So this is an incredible feature with this camera. Look at that. I mean, it's so nice. I can't even believe it. All right, so moving along, I have a couple of nice tests here for us. The first test that we have is actually the Sony Alpha 7 IV, the Sony Alpha 7 R5, and the Canon EOS R5, and they're in the RAW mode. And what you can actually see here is when we color grade, the colors, the dynamic range is just so brilliant. So what I see here is actually the Canon R5 looks really similar to the Sony Alpha 7 IV in colors and everything like that. But like the Sony Alpha 7 R5 here, it looks a lot more like a cinema camera in the RAW. The recovery, it's beautiful. It's just really good to grade with the S-Log with this guy. And by the way, it's S-Log, S-Log, and C-Log. And I think it's all three. That's important. It's not just S-Log, S-Log 3. But still really nice overall. The next thing that we tested was actually eye tracking. So I'll hand it over to the Muffin Man here. So again, this is between the Sony Alpha 7 IV, the Sony Alpha R5, 7R5, and the Canon R5. And the only one that didn't really keep the eye tracking as good is the Sony Alpha 7 IV. And this is really difficult terrain. Like, he's dodging in and out of forest in high contrast areas, and I mean, all three cameras did great, but it's something to be said about the AI that's added into the autofocus in the new camera here. It is incredible. It locked on. It was so smart on how it was like learning where Jake was as he's dodging in and out here. Really, really incredible. incredible results from all three cameras. I mean, you're not going to be sad any of these cameras, but I definitely would give an edge to this Sony here. So the next thing that we did is we did a little bit of an attempt at overheating in 8K. So this is the highest 8K with both the Canon and the Sony, and neither of the cameras overheated. The biggest issue we ran into with the Canon was actually that the card ran out. We had a 128 gigabyte card inside the CF Express Type B card inside the Canon, and yeah, he ran out after like 15 minutes. The card was full. But the Sony went on all the way for half an hour before it filled up a 80 gig card. You hold on 1 second. I'll tell you how big that card is. Yeah, an 80 gig CF Express Type A card. So the compression definitely better for recording length inside the Sony, but you're getting a lot higher quality in the Canon in terms of that 8K sensor, but it eats up way more media. When we were doing this cooking program, one thing that I was actually really surprised about wasn't overheating in the Canon R5 when it came to 8K or 4K even, but when I put it in the high frame rate for slow-mo shots, I ended up having to rely almost entirely on the Sony for Instagram slow-mo stuff because the Canon would overheat every time I put it in slow-mo, which was really funny because definitely not overheating when it was in 4K. It wasn't overheating in 8K, but the slow-mo was pushing it over the edge. Now, here we have Jake. He's about to do a little bit of a vlogging test, and just to see how the cameras hold on to him, how the audio was, and how the background looked. I'll let you watch.
ISO 125 and Full HD. So we're just gonna walk. Walking. There's a barn in the back. Hello, barn. The barn. There's my barn. Found the barn and the wall. So we'll see if there's any wobble or anything like that.
And again, all three cameras performed awesome. Again, Jake stepped up and tested the slow-mo for us with our friend Benjamin, and he took a couple of snowballs to the face. This is really fun to watch, especially anybody who knows Jake personally. Oh, such a good sport. Oh my goodness, ow. Oh my goodness. Absolutely great slow-mo out of all of these cameras. Looking at the stabilization, again, we went out, this is Benjamin. Benjamin's running from Jake. And one of them we tried with the Canon with stabilization on the lens and then without it. And just look. Again, the stabilization in the new Sony, incredible. I used to think that the R5 was unbeatable, the Canon R5, but like, look how stable this Sony is. Again, you're not going to be sad with either of them, and you definitely can clean up any shake in post with both the Canon R5 and the Sony Alpha 7 R5. By the way, any of you who are out there working in Canon or Sony, please, just some easier names to remember. Try doing reviews like this. Okay, and then here's the R7, and oh, that's the Canon R7, but this is the new Sony R7. Stop with the R's and the 7s and the D's. Just, you know, let's just call it something different. Like Lamborghini, like they don't call their things like numbers and stuff. Come on. Anyway, okay. I'm not driving a Lambo either, but so who am I to complain? The other thing I want to take a look at here is a low light test between the Canon R5 and the Sony Alpha 7 R5. and just do some recovery. I'll just put that up. You guys can see, judge for yourself which ones you think has a better low light. I kind of think the edge is with Sony, but just take a look. All right, well, so there you go. You guys can see for yourselves what the test is. I'm gonna go to specs, and then we're gonna come back with just like an 8K test between the Sony and the Canon, just for you to look at the 8K video, and we'll give our final thoughts. So let's just look at some of the specs of the Sony. So here are some interesting specs from the Sony Alpha 7R5. It's a 61 megapixel full frame Exmor-R BSI CMOS sensor, AI-based real-time AF tracking or autofocus tracking. In video mode, you have 8K up to 25 or 24p and 4K up to 60 or 50. You have a sensor crop mode that is Super 35 or APS-C. It weighs 1.6 pounds or 723 grams. The image stabilization is an 8-stop 5-axis image stabilization. Awesome. So yeah, final thoughts on this camera. I was talking to, again, some of the guys around here who are more Sony users than I am. As you guys know, I've been a big Canon user when it comes to the prosumer and the cinema cameras, big Sony user when it comes to the broadcast stuff. But one thing they were saying to me, if you were coming from like the A7 III lineup or generation, you had to do a lot to switch between the video, the slow-mo, or the photography stuff. Like, it really took a lot out of your workflow. And when we were doing this cooking program just now, Benjamin in particular was using this camera and also the Alpha 7 IV. And this button here that allows you to switch from slow-mo to video to picture really, really made all the difference in the world in his workflow. And just to put some perspective on it, so we shot 9 episodes, and I think it was 11 Instagram episodes, like short versions of the recipes, plus we were shooting the cookbook all at the same time, and we only had a week to do the entire production. They were half-hour long episodes. I think we must have pulled, like, it was 4 terabytes of media that came out of it. And this time we were shooting in mostly HD, but the next time we're going to be shooting in 4K because her programs are incredible. But just to put some perspective on it, we were going at such a quick pace. We were finishing one of the entrees, sending it out to Benjamin to do B-roll, both photo pictures for the cookbook and B-roll for the episode in these staged areas that we had set up for photography. And he had like 15 minutes tops to get all the photos of the food for the cookbook and all the B-roll for it before the next dish was coming out to him, and we're bringing everything back in together and then assembling everything together. So he had to work so fast, and with food too, you're fighting moisture gathering on the food, you're fighting melting and all this kind of stuff. I know that there's tricks to the trade out there that you can do where you can put hairspray on stuff, and that's a whole other episode. But with Edith's stuff, they eat the stuff at the end of the episode. So oftentimes we can't tamper with it. We have to actually let it be natural when we're taking the pictures of it. So the food that you see in these shots, 100% natural food. There's no doctoring to the actual food product itself. It's really the real dish. So Benjamin was like really grateful to have this switch to be able to go through slow-mo shots, photography shots, and the actual B-roll shots for the show. So great addition to that. Overall, I really like this camera. I said to the guys, this is the first time I could consider maybe using a Sony as a full-time photography camera for things I do in a photography setting. But not only that, this saved us when it came to slow-mo shots on the set. That being said, my C70 is still a hardcore competitor when it comes to everything. I almost should do a review where I just review this against the C70. That's how good this guy is. Of course, the C70 has a lot more going on for it as an overall professional body with XLR inputs and built-in ND filters and everything. But the slow-mos and the raw files, I think it would be a neat little mini video to do. So, but the C70 was occupied in the main recording. I needed the R5, the Canon R5, to be able to handle a lot of the other stuff, and it didn't hold up because of that overheating problem, again with the Canon. So big plus for this Sony. Loved it, still love Canon. Not selling my Canon anytime soon, but I'm keeping him for all of our fun photography and videography business stuff. So I hope you like that. Again, Canon user, so any of you out there who are big Sony users, be gentle in the comments. I'm not really great when it comes, if I missed something or didn't say something the way a Sony person would say it, I'm sorry. But I'm so glad you watched. I hope you like and subscribe, and put some comments down below if you guys want us to test anything in particular with this. We do have another video coming out with Marcus testing the 8K in this guy against the 6K in the Blackmagic 6K Pro. So in the RAW. All right. We'll see you in the next one, guys.